everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on Agile in Action. That was a topic that Shriwant gave me. So I'll try to stick to a project, or I'll try to give an example of an end-to-end workflow of how an Agile project works, specifically with the context of thinking about a very large organization, right? A large organization, you can think about a company which has, let's say, multiple lines of business and multiple business units with thousands of employees working on their payrolls, etc. Right. So we'll see how Agile works in such an environment. So a quick intro about myself. So I am Abhinav. I am an Agile and ways of working coach. I work with a company called Telstra, which is one of the largest telecom operators in Australia. I have 14 years of experience in completely in IT and technology projects. I'm PMP and CSM certified, and currently also exploring design thinking certification that I'm currently pursuing. Hopefully should be able to get the certificate in the next month or so, right? So while I am currently working as an Agile coach, my role predominantly is in helping the organization transform from its old ways of working to the Agile, right? So this is a big org that I'm currently working in, which has 25,000 people and multiple units. And I'm one of the persons who help them transition and adopt Agile as their ways of working. Right? So the expectation of today's topic, we are not going to cover about the basics of Agile, but we are going to look at more like a case study approach of how an Agile works in a big organization. Right. So I'm assuming I think most of you gave an answer that you are familiar with Agile and you have worked in Agile. I did see one answer saying partially. I'm curious to find out what partially means as we go along in this session. But good that all of you have some background knowledge and familiarity on Agile, so we can get started with the case study. Right. So starting with the very basics, when we asked what does the word Agile mean, a lot of you gave answers. I specifically want you to keep in mind a couple of things that you had put in. You said, changing fast as an outcome, right? And being adaptive and iterative was one more answer that I saw. Right? So remember those 2 points. We will come back to that as we end this session, maybe 1 hour down the line as we go along. Right? So if you see Agile, it is actually a concept that is very simple, right? There were a group of people who got together 2 decades back in 2001, and they designed something that they thought was the good way to work, right? And they called it the Agile Manifesto. Now, what does the Agile Manifesto comprise of? Does anybody know? You can unmute yourself and make it interactive. It's fine. Well, what comprises the Agile Manifesto? And this is the basic, right? The Agile Manifesto forms, that is where the entire trend of the world going Agile has come up. So anybody wants to share?
You can use the chat box also. If you're not comfortable talking, use the chat box, not an issue.
So I'll give you a clue. The Agile Manifesto is just comprised of 2 things, right? Mainly, just 2 things. It's just, you can write the entire Agile Manifesto in 1 page. Okay, so since I think people are still shy to start talking, I'll start writing. So Agile Manifesto has something called values, and principles. Right? These are only 2 things that it has. It has 4 values and it has 12 principles. This is all that is started or sown the seeds for the world to move into Agile ways of working. Right? So this is all that the Agile Manifesto has. Now, given that in the last decade or so, a lot of companies are transitioning to agile ways of working. Many of you would have experienced your companies adopting some way of working of agile, some flavor of agile as we work, maybe Scrum, maybe Kanban, maybe Safe, maybe a mix of all these three. So when the entire world is going gaga about moving to agile in the past 6 years maybe, right? And then knowing that agile just fits in one page, it has 4 values and 12 principles. So why do you think that is so? Do you think those 4 values and 12 principles are so powerful that it has captivated the entire industry for the last 2 decades and it is changing the entire industry? Again, please come off mute and make it interactive, because this is going to be interactive. There is no right or wrong answer. I just want your opinion of what you think. How do you think something as simple as a one-pager has changed the industry for 2 decades?
Is it easier to implement than the traditional methods?
Okay, easy to implement. That's a good answer. Right? What else?
Closer to reality.
Okay, reality. Good. Can you elaborate a little more what you mean by reality?
The requirements that comes in across, especially from a software perspective, because that's the base on which we are talking about. So even though agility is something which I tend to feel in across, that it's common across the whole organization itself. Agility needs to be there from the organization perspective, but it's more towards how do we simplify things and ensure that it is more closer to the reality. That's basically what I feel it is made in across those 4 values and principles becoming more acceptable.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? So we have easy, we have closer to reality. I also have heard the word simple while you were explaining it. Right.
It is a workable solution or a software.
Okay, that's an interesting answer. What do you mean by workable solution?
What do you mean by say I can show and demo something what I've done within the 4 weeks time?
Okay.
Writing documentation, wireframe, presentation, blah blah blah. Feature, 1 feature or 2 feature, whatever available. So that it's a show and demo, something everybody can visualize it.
Okay, visualize it. Okay, that's a good point. Visualize.
It's you're asking about more values, right?
No, I'm asking basically how has a one-pager impacted the entire industry? Right? So what is so special about that one page?
1 page.
Yeah, the manifesto. Right?
I think it is more about this 1 page is producing results.
Okay, results. That's an interesting one.
Rather than the result, I can say outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, results by results you mean outcome. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, good. So thanks so much for sharing all that. And all of you are right? It makes processes easy and simple. It makes decision making easy and simple. It gives a real feel of the product to the customer. And when you say real, it is both acts as a reality check, as well as it gives a visual appeal to the customer on the product, right? But so here is my opinion. This is why I find Agile fascinating. It is because it is just in 1 page, and a 1-pager definitely cannot tell you how to do things, right? A 1 page is not enough to tell you how to do things. If you look at, for example, the PMBOK guide that the PMP has, right? They call itself a guide, and that runs for what, like 700, 800 pages, right? So you can say, if you follow every template that is given in this 800 pages, you can run a project with a relative amount of success, right? But the 1-pager does not give you any guarantee of what to do, right? It just tells you, or it gives you a North Star or a goal on which you can base all your decisions while you work on the project, right? So what it does is it gives a lot of flexibility in the way Agile is applied and the way Agile is adopted, which has a lot of advantages, right? You can tweak it as you deem fit for your organization or for your team, right? But it also brings the challenges, right? The challenges is there are various flavors of Agile in the market now. If you see, like even if you look at basics Scrum certifications as an example, right? You have Scrum Alliance having their own certification. You have Scrum.org give their certifications. You have PMI have their own Scrum certifications, and all of them, if you for example take and attempt all these certifications, you'll find out that the content is not exactly same across all these, right? There is a slight difference in the terminologies they use, in how they approach the Agile as what they think is how it should be applied, all that. And they all ensure that they align to the 4 values and 12 principles, right? Which basically means there is no right or wrong if you follow one approach or the other approach. In fact, Agile definitely says there is no one right approach, one wrong approach. It is choosing an approach that best fits you and your team, as long as it aligns with the 12 values and the 4 values and the 12 principles, right? So this is what makes me fascinated with Agile, because you can tailor it for the problem that you're facing, for the team that you're facing, and then you can see how it works well, right? So while I am not an expert in Agile, or I don't want to think myself as an expert in Agile, because every day I also learn as I work with multiple teams as I work in Agile, but I see that it has a lot of benefits and value, right? And this is where I think this is how I got introduced to Shriwant, who is the host of this session, because I saw that he also shared a passion for Agile, and he used Agile in one of his own projects, own companies that he and his friends ran, and he was able to see the value and output in this. And he was bold enough to take the step to actually start his own company called The Growth Story, and get into sharing his knowledge and sharing his resources. So hats off to you, Shriwant, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to be a part of your forum and share whatever I know, right? So let's get into the topic for today, right? So the topic we said, it's about how Agile works in a large organization, right? So let us take a case study, right? Let us imagine a big organization. Since I come from the telecom background, I'll choose an organization in the telecom domain. Let us take, for example, Airtel as a company, right? A big organization that has tens of thousands of employees. Since I do not know much about Airtel and I do not want to be wrong, let us use a fictional company, maybe called Windtel, right? Instead of air, I'm using wind. Let us imagine this is the company that we are going to talk about. Windtel. It's a large company, has 20,000 employees, has multiple business units. And we are going to see how such an organization will work when they adopt Agile, right? So if some of you would already be working with huge companies like this, so you'll be able to relate much more to what I am speaking. And in case you see some of you work slightly differently, I'll be happy to hear your views as well on how your company does things a little differently, right? And if you are working in a small company, this will give you a flavor of what to expect in case you are working as a vendor or a partner with a larger company or organization, or in future you move to a large company or organization, right? And it is especially important to cover, or I think it is important to cover how it works in large organizations, because most of the entry level certifications for Scrum, right? Let it be PMI ACP or CSM or PSM or any of that, right? All of them look at Scrum or Agile from a perspective of a very small company or self-managed teams, right? Like if you read about them, they will very rarely talk about how Scrum works for more than a team of 10 people, right? Their initial premise itself is saying, imagine a team of 8 to 10 people, and then we'll see how everything works, right? And generally, it's not just 10 people who create an outcome. How does that work when you have 20,000 people working, right? So it is very important that even while all these certifications give you a flavor of what Scrum is, the reality is very different when you start, working on Agile or Scrum in a large organization. So most of the example going forward, I'll be focusing on Scrum as the methodology for Agile. So whenever I use the word Agile or Scrum interchangeably, please understand that I'm talking about Agile as a mindset or a methodology, and Scrum as the framework that we are going to be talking about throughout this session, right? So we have this company called Wintel, right? They are into telecom. And let's say they have an app called the My Wintel app, right? Consider it very similar to your My Airtel app, right? Where you have all the features, you can see your account, you can see your billing history, you can change your billing plan and all that, right? And let's say there is a new requirement that comes in the My Wintel app. Let's say that the requirement is you have to support international payments, right? Let's say you have to support PayPal integration, right? You want to integrate PayPal payment with your My Wintel app, right? Let's say this is a requirement, right? So I want you to imagine yourself to be the product owner of the My Wintel app, right? In your company, right? So one day you log into your laptop and you see an email from your boss, who is your business unit head. And he says, you know what, there is a new project that is coming up where you need to integrate PayPal into the My Wintel app. So get ready, right? And then see, then the mail doesn't come simply, right? Your boss sent it. So he has already said this is a mission critical project. It has senior leadership visibility. You need to make it a success and all that. And he has already started putting pressure on you while you see that email, right? So when this email kind of lands on your inbox, right? Or when you first hear about this requirement, right? There are a lot of things that happens in the background, right? Now, when you talk about a small organization that these certification programs generally give an example of, they talk in a way in which the product owner directly interfaces with the customer, right? You would have heard that the product owner is like the voice of the customer, right? Or he is the CEO of the product and all that. But imagine a big company like Wintel, where you are one of the product owners. Do you really think you interact with the end user or a customer on a regular basis? It's highly unlikely, right? Because there are multiple levels of hierarchy that you need to go through. You will have a separate, customer support business unit that interacts with the customer. There will be a sales team or a pre-sales teams that is responsible for selling your products or solutions. So there's multiple levels or layers that are there. So there are a lot of background steps that happen before you get that email, right? So what are the background steps that happen? Does anybody want to take? Where does this start? What is the first step?
Yeah,
before that email lands? Yeah.
Can I add a few points?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the requirement is manager told to the product owner integrate with PayPal into the
Correct.
application or app, right?
Yeah.
So the background could be there is a customer complaint, existing customer complaint.
Very good.
And they could not able to pay the payment through PayPal.
Okay.
They might have some data.
Okay, good. Customer complaint. Very good point. Thank you. Anything else?
And that is maybe they might be taken some kind of percentage. Let's say a 50,000 customer, maybe let's say 20% people raise this kind of complaint.
Okay.
That is number one as part of the complaint. Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying basically there's a market demand forecast that they have seen.
No. This is internal.
Internal.
This
right.
is internal.
Okay.
So they already have a customers, 20,000 customers, and while they're interacting with the conversation, the ticket raising, they could able to figure out this is one of the challenge to solve it. That is the one perspective.
So basically the
volumes.
Got it. The volume of complaints or feedback that they have got regarding a certain.
Okay. The second thing is the competitors also having this PayPal by default. So why can't
Very
we?
good.
Why can't we add into the PayPal? So in order
Excellent.
to increase the customer base, to protect
Excellent.
customer base, maybe add some more customers.
Perfect. Competitor analysis has given that trend. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Excellent points. So let's continue, right? So very good. These are some of the things where how demand can come, right? One could be internal demand that based on, how many complaints you are getting from your customer service channel demanding for a feature, or maybe even social media feedback saying, this is a feature that people would like to see. Some companies even have customer facing polls that they, hold to get an idea of what the customer demand is like. And obviously you also do a kind of a competitor analysis to see how the industry is heading, right? What is the trend of the industry? What are the close competitors doing? And therefore, what features do we need to get, right? Excellent. So this is the first step that happens in the background. What is the second step that happens? You have got all this data, right? What happens after that?
So after this data, they might be done some kind of analysis for what is the investment required.
Excellent.
Yes, case,
and
is it viable or not? If we do invest this feature, and what is the cost, and how we are going to get the money back, whether ROI
excellent.
investment, and how long it will take. And it is
Excellent.
a high level business case, and the business case should be approved from the management with financial approval. Yes, this okay, now approved. Then take it forward. That
Okay.
approval, it could become this 1 quarter or 2nd quarter based on the priority of these so many requests in the organization, right? Maybe they maybe put it to okay, put into Q3 or Q4 kind of stuff, or maybe quarter 1 or quarter based on the prioritization.
Prioritization. Okay.
Yeah, that's what once is approved.
Okay, got it. So do you think there is any step that happens before the ROI? I just want to go a little bit more in detail. So what there is one more trend in the industry nowadays, right? It is called, data analysis.
Yeah, that is analysis.
There are data analysts and data engineers in every company that they form their own team, right? They are like their own business unit and champion. So basically what happens, this market survey industries actually is sent to the data analysis teams. So the data engineers and data analysts analyze it, and they kind of get inputs on, the volume of feedback or complaints. What is the, trend or patterns that they see, right? And the output of the data engineering team is a dashboard, right? Now again, there are a lot of all these dashboard tools. So the data engineers create all these fancy dashboards that they present to the senior management saying, this is the patterns that we have seen in the last 6 months on where the industry is headed and what are the customer complaints, where we should focus on, etc. And I was actually thinking the third step is where you will get to the ROI calculation, right? Once you get all this data, because you will have hundreds of features that are listed, you cannot look at calculate ROI for each of the 100 features. So you'll start by looking at this data patterns, and wherever you see the maximum volume, you start analyzing a little bit more in depth on this, on what would be the ROI, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Excellent. So who does this ROI calculation and prioritization and all that?
Business team.
Excellent.
Who is going to fund this project? Well, they might take
Excellent.
from internally some business analyst to or maybe business excellence or reporting team, and who can do this data analysis and the required some kind of estimated money. And also the trend, as you mentioned, important point, data analysis that would also help them to where I need to prioritize which geography is required for the PayPal.
Very good. Yeah.
The south part or north part. Phase 1, I can go south part of the right, or maybe if any kind of location wise, or maybe based on the customer base, maybe new customer or existing customer, how seniority. If some kind of any prioritization, they will be taken care in the analysis. So the business team or business excellence or reporting team do this entire analysis, and they'll make the presentation with ROI, different model they will use it.
Perfect.
And they will give the return on investment, and they send the approval for the committee.
Okay, excellent. Are you a project manager by any chance?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. And do you know why I'm asking you that question?
Yeah.
Because you are using the word approval in almost every point that you are making. So I could guess that you're a project manager who is struggling to get the approval so that you can get the project started, right, on a lighter note. But thanks for sharing. All those are extremely good points, right? I just want to go a little bit, take it a little bit slower than how you took it, right? So we have this business team that calculates the ROI, right? And then their output, what is their output? Their output will be a list of requirements prioritized, right? That they think that will help the company with their strategic objectives, right? So let's say they come up with requirement priority 1, 2, 3, etc. They have like 20 requirements and they come up with, they prioritize the top 20 requirements in this way, right? And then what happens? This requirements, once they are prioritized, what happens after this? Before the approval, there are 2 more steps, by the way. So the strategic team or the business team have got this, right? They have done their, research and background work, and they have prioritized, these are the top 20 requirements in the order of priority, right? What happens after that? So it is generally then communicated down, right, to the next level of leadership, either as part of, previously pre-COVID world, they generally have, company off-site visits where they discuss their quarterly plans or half-yearly plans, in which they say, these are the next features that we are going to work on in the coming quarters, or maybe during their quarterly business planning, right? Saying, okay, in the next quarter, these are the couple of features that we are going to look at, right? And this is where, since you are all the product owner of the Wintel app, remember linking back to our story and our example, right? Your Wintel app's business unit head would get this information, right? Either from this offsite or from your QBR planning, that this is something that is there, planned. And immediately what he does after the offsite, he comes back over the weekend, and on a Sunday night, he will send you an email saying, hey, you know what, get ready. We have a new feature that is coming up that we need to work on. I hope you are ready, right? So this is where we started, our starting point of our case study, right? So do you all agree with all the steps that happened before that? So basically there is a data collection step that is done by a separate team. Let's call them a market research team. There is a data analysis team that does analysis of this data and presents dashboards. And then there is the strategy team or a business team that does all this prioritization and stack ranking of the requirements and the market demand, right? And it is only after that that the BU head and the PO, you as a PO for Wintel, will actually get that, or it's the first time that you'll actually formally get to hear of the plan, right? So after this, what happens? What is the next step? Now you have got the email formally, right? What happens after this? So you've just got a one-liner so far, right? Remember, you just have a one-liner saying PayPal should be integrated, right? You still do not have any details on by when it should be done or why it should be done and all that, right? So think about a senior management, right? What do the business unit heads do after this?
Prepare a charter, probably.
Prepare a charter, okay. Valid point, yeah.
Set the timeline.
Timeline,
identify
okay.
the teams.
Okay. Timeline, shall I say it is a roadmap?
Yeah, and roadmap also, yes.
Okay. Excellent.
And identify who is the product owner and high-level team member, who is the sponsor. team.
Okay,
So high level.
brilliant. So stakeholder identification.
Yeah. Without that, we
Right?
can't move, right?
Perfect. Stakeholder identification. Excellent. And
High level,
yeah,
high
high level.
level objective, 1 or 2 bullet point, underneath 2, 3 features.
Okay.
Why we are doing this, right? What is the
So
objective? of this?
can I say the vision statement?
Yes, vision statement.
Okay.
Why we need doing it, and what we are going to achieve.
Excellent. Brilliant. So who does all this work? Till now we spoke about 3 teams, right? Market research team, data analysis team, and then the business or strategy team. So who does all this work? Preparing the charter, timeline, roadmap, identifying stakeholders.
In my view, maybe product owner has to work with different stakeholders, make it ready, because in Agile, he is a customer, right? Product owner. Internet.
Very good. Yeah.
So the product owner has to do by collaborating with stakeholders.
Yeah.
He's going to own the charter.
Perfect. Okay. So generally what happens, the accountability of this will be with your business unit head, right? And the responsibility will be with the product owner, which is you, right? Since you are the product owner for this MyWintel app. Right? Are you all with me in the same page? So then what will happen? All these 7 steps, these are BU head plus PO will get into all these discussions. They will have their own internal brainstorming and all that, and they will prepare the charter and your vision statement and all that, right? And once they create like a roadmap view, then what happens? This is when the roadmap is finalized, right? You identify a time period. You probably identify a MVP kind of a product or a MMP, minimum marketable product, that you can actually develop along with the roadmap and all that, right? Once this is done, then what happens? This is published officially, either as part of, if it is a real big change, it can even come in the press or the newspapers, right? It is published to all your stockholders and the public who are interested in your company, and it is published in your company newsletters, right? Saying, hey, you know what, these are the most exciting things that we are working on for the next quarter, right? So all this is published. We have got the MVP ready. We have a rough idea of the roadmap and all that. And one question before that, right? Do you think just the BU head and the product owner would be able to create the MVP and the roadmap and the vision statement?
No.
Okay. Why not? And who else is required?
Some of the technical person also required.
Technical person, okay. And why is that so?
Suppose a minimum viable product, if a technical expert is available, he can say that I can do within 2 weeks time. If I don't put a technical person, they said it will take 6 months.
Excellent.
Depending upon the knowledge level.
Okay, so basically knowledge level of the platform and the frameworks and all that, right?
The past experience.
Excellent. Good. So if you look a little bit more framework wise and theoretically, the work that the product owner does, right, I'm just going to a little bit of theory here, right? Product owner does is into 3 things, right? He focus on desirability of the product, viability of the product, and feasibility of the product, right? It is called a DVF framework commonly, right? So a product owner generally needs to be good, or he needs to understand aspects of his product or a feature across all these 3 dimensions or parameters on the desirability, viability, and feasibility. So what is your understanding of desirability? What does it mean? What does it equal to?
We were able to deliver those features.
Able to deliver those features, okay. And what is desire? Desire means somebody wants it or needs it, right?
Want.
Yeah. So this is the demand of the customer, right? Demand of the user, right? So a product owner will, where will he get this information from of the desirability? You're the product owner, right? Remember, where do you get this information?
From the business case high level.
Excellent.
Level requirements.
Very good.
The charter also.
Perfect. So you already have all this that your strategy team and a business team have created for you. So you will refer that to understand your desirability factor, right?
Yeah.
What about viability? What does it mean?
Some of the bullet points may go viability.
Sorry, I didn't get you. Can you repeat?
Some of the features, some of the bullet points, the requirements, it will fall under viable. Some of them which we can make it ready.
Okay.
Some of the feature under feasibility, not sure. After done feasibility analysis, we might do, we might not do, we might drop out. Depends.
Yeah. No problem. So anybody else want to share your view on what viability is?
Viability may be from the financial perspective and feasibility from the technical perspective.
Excellent. So that is one way to look at it. Viability is more from your ROI perspective, right? The viability is generally, does it affect your top line or the bottom line, right? It should, whatever you create either should have a revenue impact, it should increase your revenue, or should have a cost impact, it should decrease your cost, right? So you analyze the viability of the product or the feature, and feasibility is more from a practical perspective, right? Do we have the technology to do it? Do we have the team's technology? Do we have the team skills to do it? It can even have something like, do we have the regulatory approvals to do it, right? So when you somebody said you need the technical people also, it's not only technical, you might need a lot of other people, like, you know, your SMEs, your subject matter experts across legal, across IT, across, you know, a lot of other people also who might contribute for you to help you define your prioritization in terms of the DVF, right? Desirability, viability, and feasibility, right?
I'm sorry,
so you,
I have a question regarding the viable. So the ROI we already done in the while developing the business case, because technically also we thought of that is fine, then only the business case is approved. So after approving, then why we need to do again ROI, and why again we need to go the technical?
Yeah.
Okay, that is a high level.
Yes.
But we need to require to do the after charter preparing again. We need to go feature wise ROI case, and in the detailed manner.
Good question. It depends on how different companies do it. Some companies calculate ROI at a very high level with high approximation, and then the product owner is responsible for doing a much more detailed calculation. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the product owner should be aware of all these three parameters, right? He could use, as you said, a lot of data which is already available on the desirability and viability based on what the business team has already developed. That he will not be doing all this from scratch. He will already have a very good starting point, sometimes even a complete picture, right? And feasibility, as you rightly said, he needs more advanced inputs from, you know, maybe his technical expert or his legal SMEs to actually find out, are there regulatory challenges? Do they have the technology? Do they have the skills and all that to get this product up and running, right? So you're the product owner. You have now looked at this product and feature. You have, you know, studied it in detail over your weekend, saying, okay, this is the new requirement that has come in. This has so and so level of desirability, viability, and feasibility, and all that, right? So what do you do next?
Sorry, I have one question. Sorry to
sure.
Bothering. So sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
What I'm trying to say, the PO, because we have a high level bullet point, we want to integrate with PayPal, maybe a couple of bullet. So in this case, before PO, the business team has to take help from the technical SMEs here and there, then try to figure out ROI and all the stuff. Everything done, then let's appoint a PO to take it forward further. After appointing the PO, again doing this work is something is not viable. Again, you are going to scrap this team.
No, makes sense. No, it is not. We are going to scrap it, but if the PO has a different opinion, he will always voice it out to the management, right?
Yeah.
I'm just. This is all based on the assumption that the PO is working more closely with the product, which is the MyARTL app. So he will have a little more insight of how customers use this app, and therefore some revision of prioritization that might happen in cases, right?
Maybe it is in line with that progressive elaboration concept of Agile. Progressively, we are going deeper and deeper. No.
That's basically what I was trying to talk about. When we say a desirability, are we talking about a detailed scope of work, wherein we are saying, hey, look, this is basically the requirement which had been given across at the initial stage, and this is how I'm breaking it down, and this is basically what I wanted. Viability, I'm looking in across from a budget and the time perspective. And the feasibility, I'm looking in across from more of a technical perspective as to who and how am I going to achieve the outcome that I wanted. Is it in line with what Agile talks about? Because I work for a smaller organization. I don't work for a bigger organization. So I just wanted to put that perspective on.
Yeah. No, this is in line with Agile. And again, you can do it at a high level or you can do it progressively, right? At each level, you do breakdown. And, Agile always talks about just because the demand for the user is X today doesn't mean the demand will be X 3 months down the line, right? You will have to revisit your demand, revisit your viability as you go along progressing through the project.
Yeah, I think maybe, I think in my view, as you mentioned, demand, viable and feasible, because it's important. At the PO level, maybe some kind of drill down that earlier we discussed with the business is very high level.
Right.
For example, technical feasibility this quarter may not be possible because we are planning to hire Oracle DB in the next quarter. So I can put into one of the buckets. That's one perspective. And ROI perspective, if I do this feature and I'm going to roll out next quarter, how much I'm going to generate the money, the particular based on the feature. So that kind of feature ROI basis based on the budget also. And as you mentioned, desirable is a basic feature I need it, at least a minimum to start.
Right.
So then maybe I can push remaining thing into the next iteration of lab. So that will be some core drill down approach, much more clarity compared to the business case high level bullet point, some drill down.
Yes, you're right.
Because because if somebody had to drive it, that will PO level only happen.
Yes, correct.
I mean, I have one more question. There is one more angle to this. To better understand, probably I need one more information. If you can share that, how much time delay is there from the point the data analysis team has given the
hold on.
Yeah,
you're stealing my thunder. That was a question that I was supposed to ask. Okay. I'll come to that. Remember this point, Shriwant. Just give me another 10 minutes. We'll complete this flow and we'll come to that. Right. Let us do the flow. Then we'll do a retrospective saying whether it is working or not. Right, Shriwant?
Sure.
Through Agile fashion. Let's complete one flow, and then we'll look at whether it works or not. Right?
Great.
Okay, so you are the PO now, right? You have now a decent understanding of desirability, viability, and feasibility. What is the first thing that you will do as a PO? Now, remember the clock is ticking. You have already put the timeline. It has been announced to your shareholders and in the press and in your company newsletters that this is a feature coming up. You're already under pressure. So what do? You're the PO now.
Sorry, can you repeat a question? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'm saying you're the product owner of Wintel app, right? So what do you do now? The clock has started ticking, right? You know the deadline when you have promised the market that you will launch this feature. So what do you start off with? What is the first step that you will do now? Think about, I'll give you a clue, sorry. Think about large, big organizations. What do large, big organizations have?
They have a quarterly.
They have a team. Okay, so you're the PO on the My Wintel app, and you already have a team that is working on the My Wintel app, right? It's not a new app. The app already exists. You're just adding one more functionality. So you already have a team. Good. What else do large organizations have? Even if you don't have a team, you'll generally have like a pool of resources from the bench or from a practice that you can pull in based on demand, right? So that is an advantage large organizations have. What else?
The selection of technology and all those things are already there.
Skills.
Systems are there.
You
Okay.
request the required resources to
Required skills.
Yeah, so that will all come in the team, right? The team depends on number of people you need and what skills you require and all that, right? And generally, large organizations have them internally, right? So that is an advantage of large organizations, that you don't have to start from scratch. Like if you're a startup with only 10 people working and suddenly you get a huge new project, you cannot divert all the 10 people to work on something new, right? You'll have to hire new people. Large organizations already have a team, right? So the PO will already has a team. He will reach out to his team and he will identify, let's say, one Scrum team that will work on this particular requirement, which is integrating the PayPal, right? What else will the PO do as the first thing? Using the
required infrastructure,
Okay.
resources, infrastructure and application licenses.
Yeah.
Very high level, yeah.
Right. Large organizations already have some, cloud licenses and all that. They already have a server where they have their base version of their MyWintel app installed. It's good. So he will look at all that, right?
And security approval, employee approval to work on the particular project. There is some security guidelines.
Okay.
We need
Excellent.
to talk to the security guys in get request in advance.
Excellent. Excellent. And you're generally saying large organizations already have some pretty established security guidelines and standards that they follow, right?
But even we need to find out who are the right person and all the stuff. It will take time.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine all these three and then call this, in project manager's terminology, organization process assets, right? These are like your SharePoint repositories or your conference repositories, where you can find all this information, right? What infrastructure licenses you have, what are your security guidances you follow and all that, right? So big organizations always, you have a repository that you can go and look at, right? As a PO, as a starting point, right? So you never start off with a clean slate. You always have, or you do start off with a clean slate, but you can always borrow slates from other projects or other business units that have worked in similar projects before in a large organization. Agree? So, okay, now you have done all this, you have done all this background work, you have looked at all your organization process assets. There is one more organization process assets that big organizations have, right? It is called, in a high level, and something that I generally don't like, but it has a lot of advantages. They have tools, right? Large organizations always use tools to manage projects, right? Do they manage projects in Excel sheets? No. And what tools do they use generally?
Jira, MS Office, MS Project.
Perfect.
Some kind of internal their management tools.
Excellent.
According to their
good
IT.
Good. Excellent. So this is what the PO would do at this point, right? He will do all this analysis, and to make it formal or to kick it off as a project, he will create a new project in Jira, right? Or if it is already an existing project that is there on the MyArtel app, he will create something like a theme or an initiative or something at that level, right? Saying, this is what I need to do that is coming up, which is called PayPal integration, right? So he will create it in Jira, right? And he will form his team, right? He will say who among his team are going to work on this particular requirement or initiative, right? After that, if you're a PO, the flow becomes pretty simple and pretty common, right? Once you have the theme and the initiative, what you will do, you will kind of break down the theme into epics, right? Epics are basically deliverable chunks of work that add value. And then you do your backlog refinement meetings, or backlog grooming, as they are called sometimes, along with the team. And you break them down into user stories. What happens after that?
Task.
Okay, user stories, you do sprint planning, basically, right? Sprint planning in which you define a sprint goal and maybe sometimes break down the user story into task level by the team, right? So you facilitate all these, the team will have a Scrum Master who will facilitate these ceremonies or help to get across the impediments and all that. You will have your daily stand-ups, something that a lot of people hate because every day they have to face their boss, right? And then you will have your sprint review in which you will review what work you did. And finally, Shriwant's favorite, you'll get into retro and look at what worked and what did not work. And finally, ultimately, your goal is, if you think you did everything correctly, let's say in 3 months' time, you will be able to come up with an MVP or an MMP that you can actually deploy to production and have a pilot launch, right? Generally, people do a pilot launch. They don't do a big launch. They have a sample set of maybe only 10% users who are exposed to this feature. They get the feedback and then iteratively they kind of develop on it, right? Any questions so far on the floor? Do you think all these steps are important and key in a large organization? Or if anybody work in large organizations, do you think some of these steps can be skipped or bypassed, or they do things better?
That MVP, is it possible to showcase to the management in between and stuff? Waiting for the MVP takes 6 weeks or 8 weeks.
Perfect.
Why should
So
I wait?
MVP is also iterated and feedback is obtained, right? Every sprint, right? Good. So yeah, MVP might change, right? What you think by the MVP today, after 2 sprints, you might find out that 1 or 2 features need to be kicked out and 2 more features need to be added. So
Or
MVP
maybe
can
they
change.
may be cap also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it could be both plus or minus, right? But good point. You are reusing the MVP. So Shriwant, now coming to the question that you asked. This is what I wanted to ask, right? How much time do you think it took for this fictional company of Bintel to identify a requirement based on market need to when they could actually have a common user like me to make a transaction using PayPal live on the app? How long do you think it would have taken? Shriwant, what's your guess?
See, I think it cannot be more than probably 1 month or 1 quarter, not more than that. Otherwise, the competitive edge would be lost.
Okay.
So probably
Shriwant
every
says,
quarter, at least the large organization should be doing this.
okay. Shriwant says 1 quarter. Anybody has any other?
From the high level objective till MVP.
Yeah, correct. Right from when the user, when this need was identified, right, by the data analysis team to when
but
it went live.
Still end customer using this app or only
Yes.
level?
Yes, end customer using this app. Right?
No. What I have guessed is from the time the data analysis team, they identified the need, and the BU head, the app BU head has received the requirement.
No, let us there's a concept called systems thinking, right? Let us look at the end-to-end flow.
Okay.
The moment a bunch of data reaches the data analysis team to when I can start actually making a payment using PayPal in my app.
At least 1 year.
1 year, okay.
Yeah.
So you're basically rewriting your thing to say it's 1 year. Excellent. Anybody else thinks it can be done shorter?
Yeah.
Before I get across into the timeline, I just wanted to ask you across, like, how are the CRs handled? Because my worry is more on that area.
We'll come to the CRs. I'll definitely address this because I want to identify first a challenge. CRs is a challenge, right? Especially in a large organization, and definitely that is linked to this time period also. Okay.
Yeah.
So hold on for 5 minutes and let us discuss.
2 quarters for to appoint the PO. So one quarter development and one quarter using this PayPal and getting that money or whatever transaction.
Okay. So you're saying 3 quarters?
3 quarters. Yeah. 3 quarters I'm thinking overall.
Okay. Good. So Shriwant says 4 quarters. You says 3 quarters. So do you think it is agile? When you say agile, a lot of you spoke about speed of execution, right? Fast response and all that. I mean, is responding in 1 year fast?
1 quarter development will be taken care of, whatever it doesn't matter.
Right.
But 2 quarter only at business level approval going back, and it will take its own time. So at least 2 quarter will go with the multiple thing. Manager go vacation, 15 days he won't approve it, and financial they want to study one more time. So it will take 2 weeks time for analysis before approving the business case. 1 week purely 1 quarter development. After developing, and also again there is integration to be happen to the exiting Wintel app, right? Again that has to go to the rollout to the market. All the stuff. It will take another quarter.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. So actual development agile only development that we are using effectively, but remaining we are not really using agile.
Right.
Only.
Okay. So basically what you are saying is only the development is called agile.
Just
right? Your end-to-end flow is not agile.
Correct. Absolutely. It is large organization. Large organization.
In large organization. Okay. And this is exactly the point that I want to drive, right? You can talk about agile. Agile has captivated the industry for 2 years. And this is exactly the reason why large organizations are not able to compete with startups when you talk about, how do you really adapt faster to the market, right? Because they do have this hierarchical flow, and there's no way you can actually reduce this from at least 1 year, which is the approximate time that it generally takes, right? And this is something that is called the time to market, right? From the time a feature is identified to when it actually is deployed to the market. But if you ask any large company, they would very proudly say in their website and in their newsletters that they are an agile organization, right? Nowadays that has become a trend. Every large organization has it on the first page of their website saying they are agile, and they do a production release every sprint or every week or every month and all that, right? So what is that? Where is the disconnect?
That is only marketing purpose they are talking, but the legacy leadership is not changed their mindset, right?
Okay.
One developer, there, 4 or 5 people developer, one architect could able to deliver feature completely within 1 month, 2 months. Because of the legacy leadership at top level, they are not agile, first of all.
Yeah.
And if they are agile also, but other leaders also not agile. So still they are going the traditional methodology of thinking, traditional methodology of thought process. That is never changed until unless new leader, young leader come at the top levels. That might be changed maybe over the period of time. So it's a moral mindset of the leader.
Perfect. So you are basically saying it's a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, just a marketing gimmick.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let me ask another question. Do you think a big company like Wintel, they actually do a production release every sprint?
No.
Okay. Actually, they do. Like, I know in the company that I work, we do a production release every sprint, right?
You're talking about the sprint.
I would like to add something here.
Yeah.
So when we are saying that this time to market is 1 quarter or say 1 year, we are assuming that it is for one product owner. So suppose we have 20 product owners, then 20 things are coming in 1 year, right?
That's the truth to the marketing gimmick. Exactly, Shriwant, you hit the nail on the head. That is how all these companies do a release very frequently, right? When they say they do a weekly release, it's not that I have identified a feature today, which is 30th April, and I can actually get it to production on 7th of May, right? This will never happen. It is whatever feature was identified in October last year, right? That is what will go to live on 7th of May. There will be another feature that is identified in November last year that will go live on 15th of May, right? This is how things happen. So while your app will always, as tell you there's a new upgrade available, update every 15 days, right? That is an update that the team has actually started working a good 2 to 3 quarters behind in the timeline, right? So it is not necessarily a false marketing gimmick, right? There is an element of truth to it. And because they follow Agile is why they are able to do all these frequent releases. But for one particular feature to be identified to actually go to the market, it will take multiple quarters, right? So just be aware of this fact, because when you Scrum guide, for example, says every sprint there is a potentially shippable increment to production, right? It does not mean if you become a product owner in the large organization, don't even have in your wildest dreams that customer has requested this today, in one sprint I will have to deliver it, right? It is not as simple. It has to flow through this entire value chain and then get delivered, right? There was a question on change requests. So what exactly is the question? Because we are now considering the example of a company like Wintel, right? What could be the change request for a company like Wintel in their My Airtel app?
Okay, let me answer this question, or let me put in across my thought process on this.
Okay.
As in, what made me put in across that question? Because what we normally tend to look in across is, while we have across a waterfall methodology, I'm going back to the olden days. I come from that particular age, basically. So when we had the project management being done on those layers, like we exactly can identify, like these are basically what the CRs are.
Yes.
But when it gets on into an agile side of it, wherein we are saying this agility or this flexibility, ensuring that the customer needs, and I'm working very closely along with the customer, and I'm getting across a feedback from a customer on a regular basis, then how are these CRs handled, and how do I exactly project in across with respect to the timeline required for completing it?
Right. Great. So you are the product owner, right? That is the example that we are seeing, right? Let's say you have identified for this sprint. A sprint generally is 1 to 3 weeks. Let us consider a 2-week sprint, right? For this sprint, you have identified features A, B, and C as the topmost priority features, right? And then you also have a roadmap saying for sprint 2, you have features D and E lined up. Okay.
Okay.
So you prioritize these 3 features for these 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, on the 15th day, you will talk to your customer, right? And ideally showcase the work that you have done, right? In this time, the customer can either give a feedback saying this is not what he expected, or he finds out a new insight about this and he asks for more features or more additions, right?
All right.
Can I consider this as the CR that you're mentioning?
Yep.
Okay. So he asks for feature X, which is in addition to it, right? There's a new feature X that has come, right? You have something called a product backlog, right? A product backlog will have all the features, which is your ABC, which you have done in this sprint, your DE, which you have lined up for next sprint. Now you will add feature X also to that, right? And then you will ask the customer saying, what is the priority of this feature X as compared to D and E? Because D and E is what you have planned to do in the next sprint, right?
Okay.
If he says X is of a higher priority, you will ask which of these items can I drop? Because I cannot do all these 3.
Right.
Right. So he might say feature X is more important than feature E, for example, right? Then you will swap. So for sprint 2, instead of doing sprint D and E, you will move E back to the backlog and you will prioritize feature X for sprint 2, right? And you might also prioritize some enhancements for feature A, right? That after you showed the demo, that he found out there are some more things that he has, corrections that he has given, that let's call it A star. You will prioritize that because he has said that is of higher priority. Let us finish doing this, right? So this is how you handle change requests. Because as a product owner, if you are a vendor and you are dealing with a customer, you always have to ask your customer saying which of these have a higher priority. Because you know your capacity for a sprint, how many people you have employed, you know your budget, and you know your velocity, which is generally how much you complete or achieve in a sprint as a team, right?
Got it. Now,
So
linking this with the budget, the sales side of it. So I know that like we are more focusing with respect to the cost that I am spending as a project team. Now look at it from this might be true with respect to a larger organizations, but when it gets on or drills down into smaller organization, the same product owner is directly interacting with the end customer also.
Yes.
Meaning this conversion of E to X in the example that you cited right at this point of time, the swapping which happens in across might be the effort that I'm spending in across on E is lesser compared to the amount of time that I'm going to spend on X, which could be higher.
Yes.
In that hypothetical scenario, the charge that the amount that I'm going to be charging in across back to the customer is going to be higher. Which drills down to this question that even though I am agile as an organization, I cannot be ensuring that this can happen in across this faster as long as I get in across the approval from the customer on this timelines.
Right.
So is that a common challenge that we tend to face in across, or is it peculiar to a smaller organization? This is basically my question.
So it is a common challenge, very, very common challenge, because even in large organizations, you can identify there will be frictions across different levels of the management that can create a similar situation, right? And Agile has a recommendation for it. It doesn't have a solution, but a recommendation in that there is something that you created as a product owner called your product vision, right? And Agile always talks about value delivery, right? Now, when the customer says feature X is more important than feature E, he's basically saying the value that he gets out of feature X is greater than the value that he gets out of feature E, right?
Got it.
So now feature X might take more time to deliver than feature E, right? In that case, what you will do, you will break down feature X into X plus X star, right? And you will ask within feature X, what is the MVP, right? Well, what is the initial thing that you want so that you can really get a feel of that feature, right? And you'll prioritize that to be done in sprint 2 and then something else in sprint 3, right? Because ultimately what you're saying, even if, for example, this feature E is not delivered at all, right? Instead of that, you have delivered feature X. Basically what you have done is you have overall increased the value that you have delivered to him in the 2 sprints.
Right.
Again, thinking from a waterfall perspective, this project was a failure because you have not finished task E.
Correct.
But thinking from an agile perspective, this project is a success because you have increased the value that you have delivered in 2 sprints.
Understandable.
Right. And this is a
Makes
conversation that you need to have with an external customer in the example that you are giving, right? And if you get a nice customer, you are lucky who understands this concept. There are some customers who want to follow agile but still want everything delivered that is there in the initial contract, and they are tough customers to face.
It's only all the best there.
Yes. It's then your people skills that come in terms of how you deal with that person. Agile cannot solve it.
Got it.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Actually, I took a very easy example, right? We all assume that Wintel app is already there. You're just adding one enhancement to it, which is supporting PayPal payments, right? You already support debit card payment, credit card payment, net banking. Now you're adding a new payment, right? And that itself, you said it takes 3 quarters to 4 quarters to actually see the light of the day. Imagine a situation where there is a new initiative or a brand new innovation that Wintel is working on. They want to get into 5G adoption, right? This is completely new. How long do you think something like this will take to see what would be the time to market for this, right? They have done competitor analysis, as somebody said. Wintel has seen that, Vodafone and Airtel are moving towards 5G. They have already done multiple press releases saying they are going to 5G. So they also want to go to 5G. Wintel, what do you think would be the time to market here? Do you think 3 quarters, 4 quarters would be enough?
No. 10 quarters, 12 quarters.
Exactly. So you will take at least 3 years time, right? It's such a long time. And imagine the complexity that comes, because in 5G adoption, there will be multiple teams also that you need to work across, right? It is not just previously you just had to work with your My Wintel app team, right? To actually develop all this, because that's just one functionality you added. Here you have to work with your network software team to enable you do all those configurations, your network hardware team who set up your towers and all that. You then have to work through your legal team because you need permission to set up your towers and your physical infrastructure. You still have to do some changes in your app to enable monitoring 5G. You have to do other legal and IT requirements like doing a speed test once you move to once you move to 5G. Then you'll have to fight against regulatory approvals, because some people say 5G is harmful for health. So the radiations of 5G are not good for health. You'll have, lawsuits fighted, against you. You'll have to work against that, and you have to develop your roadmap and MVP, right? Which takes into account the plans of all these teams put together, right? And every sprint, every team calls itself agile. They keep changing their priority. They keep changing their roadmap. Imagine the amount of confusion that can happen when these number of teams have to coordinate with each other, right? So again, this is why large organizations do not have a solution to it. They are trying very hard by adopting agile to at least be agile in the development part and see whether they can get feedback every sprint and kind of speeden things up. But life is not all hunky-dory in large organizations, even if they really follow agile as a very matured organization, right? I just wanted to touch upon this point and let you know, because if you attend Shriwant's PMI ACP training, he will take an example of a 10-member team. He will say you will directly talk to the customer every day, and you will make changes to the product left, right, and center. And if customer asks, immediately the same day you will ask your developer to make the change, and in 15 days it will be unit tested, integrated tested, system tested, performance tested, security tested, and go to live, right? So if you are an aggressive product owner, it's good that you work in a startup because you only have 10-20 people to coordinate with, and you can move things fast. If you do get into product ownership, please be mindful of the fact that while all these certification programs talk about basic Scrum framework in a plain vanilla fashion to enable you to understand, right? I'm not saying they are wrong. That is the only way in which you can understand, but the practical realities are too high, right? So this was like the content of the case study that I wanted to share. Did you do, any of you have any comments, any feedbacks? Was it useful? Were you able to relate to it from a large org perspective?
It answers questions on overall perspective. The only comment or might be the area untouched upon, or was it untouched wantedly, consciously, because we thought that like it is part of this, was the communication related stuff. How is the internal communication happening in across, like that was one area which I thought like because it is inbuilt, it has to be happening in across, so let me not touch upon that. That could have been a conscious decision that you have taken in across, but right. That was one thing which is lingering within me.
Got it. Valid feedback. Communication is a big challenge, and this is why there are some scaled agile frameworks that give some benchmarks or guidelines to how interactions can happen, right? There are some models like SAFe and large scale Scrum. It is called LESS. There is something called Agile at Scale. There's something called Scrum of Scrums. All this kind of help you scale agile, where there are multiple teams that work on this agile mode or Scrum mode, and if each of them keep changing their priorities every sprint, how do they coordinate across, right? And each of these have their own separate certifications and all that, but all these are theoretical. I'm telling you from my practical experience that they all kind of preach you industry best practices, but my definition of best practice is always a practice that has worked for a particular team for a particular situation. Lift and shift of one best practice of one team might not work for another team. So I would always replace the word best practice with good practices, right? And good practices are always iterative. There's no one solution. You try one thing. If it works, you continue. If it doesn't work, you quickly change and pivot.
We are moving towards from best practice to the next practice.
Exactly. Yeah, next best alternate, right? That's what you call in decision making. Yeah. Next best alternate. What is the NBA? You call it. What is the next best alternate?
So Abhinav, I would just like to add two more points. So one point is that we have taken the entire this walkthrough of this case study from the perspective of the product owner, right? PO. Where is the role of Agile Coach and Scrum Master fits in? Number one.
Okay.
Yeah. So
go ahead,
let's take this question.
Okay.
And if anybody else has any question, then please talk.
Okay. Shriwant, when I asked for what is the next question, it is because you have asked a very difficult question and I want to avoid it, right? So I thought your second question will be easier. I'll answer that and kind of buy some time, but you are not allowing me to do that. So I can, within the two parts, I'll answer the easier part, right?
Okay.
The Scrum Master will actually start working with the product owner very closely. By the time he starts creating this Jira and Confluence and starts creating this team or an initiative, right? Because this is where he puts across his team. So the Scrum Master knows which team he is working with, and he will try to align he'll try to imbibe all the agile best practices or good practices for his team, right? And he will work with the product owner on a very close basis day to day and with his team on all the aspects that we discussed here, right from facilitating ceremonies to identify the themes, to breaking them down into epics, helping with backlog refinement, user stories, sprint planning, some amount of tracking, impediments removal as the team goes through any of these stages if they have any impediment, right? And surprisingly, you will see in a lot of teams that I have worked in, do you know what is the biggest impediment that they said they have faced? They have said the product owner is their biggest impediment, right? Because either the product owner is too controlling and he keeps changing direction left, right, and center every single day, or the product owner is too busy because he manages 4 or 5 teams and he doesn't have time to answer their queries or clarify their doubts, right? So in a lot of big companies, you see that the product owner is generally cited as the biggest roadmap. The team complains to the Scrum Master saying the product owner is not available, therefore I am not able to get clarity and continue working on this. So the Scrum Master now has to have a conflict of opinion or interest. He has to go and challenge the product owner, and that is how things work, right? So while the Scrum Master and product owner, I would say they work in a handshake mode. Both are peers. They work towards a common goal of getting the delivery done, but with a different objective, right? The Scrum Master supports the team while the product owner, you can imagine product owner is ultimately responsible for the output, right? He is thinking about what is the ROI, what will happen if I don't deliver this, how many customers will get impacted, what will be the customer churn if that doesn't get delivered and all that, right? He really does not care, to be very frank, whether you follow Agile, Scrum, Kanban, or do your own waterfall method or whatever, right? He wants value delivered because ultimately he is measured on his ROI, right? So that is it. The Scrum Master plays a role in all these steps, right? Starting from here to the entire value chain. An Agile Coach can work at different levels at an org, right? Now, let me, since you asked about Agile Coach, I'll say he can work at a team level or he can work at a org level, right? So when at a team level, such Agile coaches work with either one team or with 3 or 4 teams, or sometimes with 8 to 10 teams that work on the same business unit, right? For example, all these 8 to 10 teams work on the same MyAirtel app. They will have one Agile coach who will work and he will try to coach all these 10 teams, right? And when you say coach 10 teams, generally the one-on-one interaction that you do with each team member will be limited. You will try to more of be a silent participator in their ceremonies, observe, what are the patterns that are working, not working, and then have a candid chat with the Scrum Master and say, why don't you try this? Why don't we try that? Do you think there is scope for improvement and all that? And ultimately let the Scrum Master actually implement those ideas and changes, right? Because ultimately it is his team. He has that rapport established with his team, that comfort area and space that he has created with his team. So he or she is much better positioned to do the implementation part, right? There is agile coaches who work at org level, right? For example, I work at org level, in which I also look at the point that was mentioned, right? The communication part. How do different teams, for example, when you talk about the 5G example, right? If there is a 5G project that has 3 business units that are working on it, right? Now, each of these business units will have their own coach, right? Each of the business units will have their own agile coach. So while all the business unit heads will have their sync up to say how they are going, all the business unit, all the 3 agile coaches, we will also have to have our own sync up and say, this is the common terminology that we are going to use, right? This is the common, sprint cycle that we are going to use, right? For example, I'm saying in a big organization, see, agile does not mandate every sprint should, for example, start on a Wednesday and end in 2 weeks time, right? But a lot of big companies actually follow a protocol like this, right? Because at an org level, at a communication, they want an understanding saying, if I say my business unit will deliver this at the end of sprint 142, every other team in the org should be able to understand what it is, right? If each team follows their own sprint model and their own sprint duration, it is not possible, right? So we as organization agile coaches work towards ensuring common terminology, common practices across all these teams. How do you do your common sync ups between those different teams? And sometimes even facilitation of these common sessions, right? For example, there could be a conflict of interest between 2 BUs. BU1 might say X is more priority. BU2 might say Y is more priority, especially in terms of resources, right? There will be one skilled SME which both BU1 and BU2 want in the same quarter to be allocated to their team, right? So we kind of facilitate those discussions. We kind of encourage those people instead of, playing a power game. Because generally in an organization, you will know one person has more power or autonomy than the other, irrespective of the hierarchy. So we try to make those decisions not based on power, but based on data, right? We basically ask them, can you share what is the ROI? Can you share what is the impact if this person does not join your team, right? And then do a comparative analysis saying impact of BU1 is greater than BU2. So logically, it makes more sense for the person to be allocated to BU2, right? So we kind of do all this kind of thing and basically get a bad name across all people in the organization, right? But anyway, the reality of it, agile coach is a very glorified role. The title looks very nice, right? But yeah, basically people don't like you, right? But it's the same everywhere, right? Even if you're a project manager, people don't like you generally. So doesn't matter. Does that answer it, Shriwant?
Yeah, sure.
So Shriwant, I heard there are also a couple of questions on, what is the role of an agile coach, or how do we become an agile coach and all that? Is that right?
So there was 2-3 questions. Let me just tell you.
Okay. Upinder, you have a hand up?
Yeah. I have one practical issue. Maybe I would like to put forward this issue. Maybe we'll see different views. It will take a minute. So we have given a work to the vendor for automation work by using RPA, AL, and ML automation. The first time we are exploring. So we didn't find the resources internally. We thought of we want to engage some third party. Okay. So they come with the outcome model as we discussed in the beginning, not a result model. What we have multiple vendor. We shortlisted this guy. He said we don't require a single money initially, or every sprint will deliver to you this automation tool and use for your production floor. Okay, we are spending in a particular task, for example, order creating with the customer, telephone connections or internet connection, taking 1,000 orders, I'm taking maybe 10,000 hours. So by this ALML, maybe I'm getting 50% saving hours. So they said, if you save 50%, then we'll pay this much. That kind of terms and agreement we had it. So
very good. Outcome-based pricing.
Yes, yeah. If I deliver it, you pay it. So this is exciting. So we don't require any fund initially. I think these guys are ready to do it. So the problem is they took a sprint one. They want to deliver something, but nothing is materialized because we were not much agile as a company. But this company, also startup company, they were claimed a lot of agile. But initially, we have a teething problem at their end and our end. We could not do anything. Just set up nothing else sprint one. They said, don't worry, and we will do whatever the missing here, we'll take into sprint two. Yesterday night, we got a presentation from the vendor, and whatever he promised, almost he said, for example, I'll give the telecommunication fiber to the home FTH network. We are rolling out one of the telecom operators. So there's a couple of tasks like a cluster grouping and node boundaries and some kind of node placement. From that, each customer, the fiber, they will pull it. So a couple of high-level tasks. So, for example, in the particular task, they said 95% possible automation with RPA and LML. If you're spending 10,000 hours as a manual, so 95% they can automate it. So 5% only I need to do it.
Very good.
But reality in the sprint two, they mention only 30%. Like that, so like some of the example, the cluster correction, and 70% they estimated, again 30% they expert. And the cluster correction 70% against 30%. It means the 30 to 40% automation sprint. The sprint two.
Okay, so what's your question basically? I understand there is a disparity.
So the question here is there a problem with our company or is there a problem with the vendor side? But somewhere it is a governance is lacking. But see, this is what they agreed in the sprint one. But end of the day, almost 30 to 40% we could able to see the output. And we spent almost 2 quarters, 1.5 quarters something. But the result is almost 30 to 40% outcome. The management, they don't listen it. Since we agreed and approved and we have given some initial amount to set up. Now after 2 sprint, you're coming back, you look at it almost 30 to 40% automation. But whereas you agreed for 80 to 90% automation, then why it's so gap? Because Agile is working sprint model and we have a regular communication, daily stand-up, blah, blah, blah. But even though the result is like this. So
my simple answer would be Agile does not solve problems, right? But what does Agile do? Agile will make problems visible faster. Okay. Maybe the problem is it is not possible to do 95% automation. The practical reality is only 40-50% can be automated. And because you're following Agile in 2 sprints, you have come to understand that reality, right? If you had followed a waterfall, maybe you would have signed a 1-year contract and only after 1 year, you would have found out that it can be only 30-40%. So by following Agile, it has just surfaced the problems much faster. That is the way I would look at it. But what exactly problem and how do you take it forward is a one-on-one conversation that you need to be coached upon, or it's a strategic decision that your management has to take, right?
Okay. So basically, I would like to understand this Agile. We are not Agile, but vendor is an Agile. But we think that anything which we can do, working closely with this vendor to get much more reality in the beginning, or is there any governance is missing here? Because in the business team, they are not really supporting well. Just they're giving some kind of manual task, that's all. They're not supporting. We are busy always our work.
See, if your requirements are not clear and how you measure your output is not clear, whatever methodology you use is not going to help you, right?
Yeah, requirement is clear, but they're consuming a lot of time. I'm committed, my user is spend 4 hours, but actually reality is spending 1 week time to give same information.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I do not have an answer because I don't think I can solve it in 10 minutes. If I could solve it in 10 minutes in this call, you and your company would have already solved it 3 months back, right?
But thanks, Abhinav. But I got a very good flavor for this session. That eye opener is when I say Agile mindset and Agile leadership and the company, the total Agile, everybody talking about. But today, the discussion, the case that we explained, this is development is only happening in Agile, but everywhere is non-Agile. So that is a major junk, right? So
yeah,
I have a few thoughts. Probably this kind of initiative has to come from third-party vendor. For large organization, they should not think themselves. They should give some consulting company. They'll study and get the thing done very faster and to take a decision faster as separate outside of the traditional business operation. Then probably that also will be Agile. To collect the requirement, get the business case and get approval, maybe within a week time they could have to do it, some kind of their data analysis. If you go with the departmental functional way, it will take at least 4 months.
right.
A lot of persistence and other stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good prospect on other side of the development.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Upendra, just one small correction I want to make in your understanding. Don't ever say that only development is Agile, everything else is not Agile. Everything else is also Agile to the flavor that it can be, right? For example, when I said the strategic team or the business team prioritizes requirements, those prioritizations are also reviewed frequently, right? For example, today they said launching this PayPal integration is the highest priority. After 3 months, if they say, that is not the highest priority, it can be deprioritized, right? And your project can be either asked to slow down or shut down fully at the business or strategic level also, right? So in that way, the decision making, the business or strategy team will also continuously keep looking at the market and even internally for more feedback and information that comes. Okay, it's not like you sign a document saying this is our roadmap for the next 18 months, like in a waterfall, and then say whatever happens, you have to meet that scope, time, and cost, right?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, but in the development, they're 100% using a 95%.
Correct.
The business, that is a cascade effect for the business. Also, they have to do it.
Yes.
As you mentioned just now, in other way, good thing Upendra, because you got 50% automation now within a 2 sprints. If you give waterfall method, maybe after 1 year you could know, but by the time money, infrastructure, everything waste. So this is a big saving another way to experiment. Yeah,
great.
I got it.
Thanks. Thanks, Upendra. Great points. Thanks. Okay, we are, I think, the last 10-15 minutes. Any final questions for me before I hand it back to Shriwant?
If a multiple agile projects are running with multiple products in the organization, is there any team who can manage the entire metrics organization level dashboard of the departmental, functional, and development related health or metrics? Somebody had to do, because as a product owner, he is only responsible internally his own product, but at organization who can report at CTO, CEO level, right? This is 100 projects are going on. These are the health, these are the priorities. Some kind of dashboard who can handle entire agile metrics handling at a high level.
There are two ways to look at it. One is, yes, have a separate team, right? Separate team who are skilled in Tableau or Power BI or some modern skills like that, and who work on consolidating data from each of the team, right? And publish it every week or every sprint or every quarter, right? This is basically called your push model of reporting, where you push your reports to the management, right? There's another model called pull model, in which, for example, if you are using a tool like Jira, right, and you can actually standardize workflows where multiple teams can use the same workflow, and you can actually aggregate views in tools like Jira, right? So anytime anybody can log into Jira and look at the report and get a status, right? And these reports can be at a user story level or epic level or even initiative level or cross company level, right? So there are two, your modern tools like Jira and Rally that support corporate wide reporting also. This is more what Agile recommends, because you don't want a separate team just following up with multiple teams for updating some Excel sheet just because they need to publish a report to a manager, right? So as Agile, because I'm an Agile coach, I will recommend the pull model, but a lot of big companies, they still follow the separate team model because they are more comfortable having one person accountable to ask for the reports.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Abhinav, one question from my side. This is the last question.
No problem.
Yeah. So often I listen from people who say that, hey, whenever we are doing the agile transformation in a company, it should be top driven or it should be top down. So from the large company's perspective, how do you see this happening?
Okay, interesting. So first of all, when you look at, let's just consider your agile development effort, right? In development, in agile, what you do, you first develop an MVP or an MMP, right? Which is like a minimum viable product that the customer can actually use, right? Do you think this product will have an excellent UI or a UX experience for the customer? Unlikely, right? Do you think this will have all the features that the customer would like to have?
No.
No, right? Do you think ultimately it will lead to a wow factor for the customer while using this feature?
Not at all.
Right? Similarly, when your senior management is going to look at this feature, they are also not going to find it to be perfect, right? If this management is from a traditional waterfall background, right? In traditional waterfall model, what happens? You generally are responsible for delivering a quality product, right? Because you take 1 year, 1.5 years to develop it. You do all levels of 5, 6 levels of testing, and then you deliver it, and it will be a fully functional product, right? A big bang kind of a launch.
Right.
So as management, they are always used to seeing a fully developed, nice product that immediately, as soon as they see it, they will be able to use it and understand, right? Will they be flexible enough to find something that is half-baked like this, give feedback, and then slowly improve step by step every sprint and every quarter, right? That is a huge mindset change that if the top management is not ready for it, or if it's a customer vendor model, and if the customer is not ready for it, you're going to really struggle, right? Well, you can always say every sprint I'm going to add value. If I'm the senior manager, I'm going to ask, you're always adding value, all that is fine. When am I finally going to be able to use it properly, right? I'll always be saying nobody's satisfied with your product. What the hell are you doing? Right. So that is why you always say top-down approach, because until the top level people understand what it is meant by iterative and adaptive, right? These are the two terms that stand for agile, right? What do you mean by iterative and adaptive? In concept has to be understood by the top management. Otherwise, your development team, you can hire the best Scrum Master from the industry, best Agile Coach from the industry. Nothing's going to work. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for your participation and for your very good questions. I hope I was able to give you a slightly different flavor of how Agile works in a big company. And it is challenging to make Agile work in a big company. And always understand, even big companies, they are trying their best to be as responsive to the market as possible, right? They are also not internally happy with something takes 4 quarters to actually go to market. They also would ideally like to see it go once in a month, right? But they're getting there. I don't think industry has really matured to that level of a state. That is why you're nowadays, industry is moving towards no code development, because all your coding efforts will get reduced. It is moving toward DevOps, because you basically do continuous integration, continuous deployment. You don't wait for particular teams to do handoffs between one team and another and all that. So I think the industry is evolving. Agile can only solve certain problems, but Agile's, again, if there's one takeaway, I'll say Agile will surface your problems much faster, but it might not solve the problems. It's the people who are working Agile who have to put their brains to solve the problems. So that would be my final takeaway. So thanks everyone for attending. I'm happy to interact with any of you offline as well, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or any forums, or be in touch in any other social media as you want. Shriwant, thank you for the opportunity, and over to you if you want to take it for the last 10